Welcome back to the Peak Performers Podcast. Today, we'll continue talking with Penny Zenker. We're talking all about how to boost your productivity using simple but effective techniques, and the one thing you should never do in the mornings.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Let's talk a little bit about clarity. It's so important to kind of declutter and get, all the mess, get organized. I love it when you say, let's get organized. Because if you don't have clarity and you're not organized, productivity is so much more difficult. Tell us some tricks, tips, tools, strategies that we can use.
Well, it depends on what area, right?
Tell us all of them.
Pretty broad. Okay, let's get organized. I'll say that with quotes. Somebody used to say that you can tell how organized somebody is if you look at the trunk of their car, and that'll tell you sort of their organizational habits. But don't worry, we're not going to check the trunk of your car, and we're not going to come look at your desk.
Well, I do look at cars. When I hire someone, true story, I walk them back out to their car. I want to see how they keep. Now, I don't ask them to pop the trunk, but I'm looking in the car, and I want to see how they keep the interior of their car. And if it's really messy, chances are, unless they were a superstar, they're not getting hired.
Oh, man, what if they had their kids that they had to take to school in the morning and they you know how it is with kids. They throwing things around and leaving wrappers there.
All right, I'll give you an excuse for the kid's wrapper, but we're going to have to get that kid in line. All right, we need to get him organized.
Absolutely. There you go. So, I think it's super important to be organized. And, maybe that's one of those things that I'm in productivity so I can learn these things myself. I think that first of all, you need to be organized in your thoughts. So when you're organized in your thoughts and you can put things into categories and create frameworks, like that's what I do so that I can put things in their buckets. So being said, when I create a to-do list, my to-do list has categories. And not 1, 2, 3 priority, even though I may do some of that. I do it by the results that I'm looking to get, and then I have those categories. If you're going to be working through your email, right, you want to use categories. That's how you create folders so that you can automatically put things, for instance, that if you're in a big organization and you get CC'd a lot on things, why not create a folder where it automatically goes into the CC so you can check that when you need to, but there's nothing in there that's urgent for you to look at. You could organize things by days of the week to be able to tell you that here's what I'm going to work on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You could have that in your folders in your email so that you can filter and file things. You can have that in your desk so that when something comes across your desk but you don't need to work on it today, then you can put it into the proper place. I believe also as you're storing files, you want to be able to organize things by the type of file it is. So, and every organization is different, but think about that because when you're sharing files with people or you want to find files quickly, you want to know, okay, every client project has, the first 3 or 4 initials with an underscore and then the type of document that it is and then something else. And then always, please version things properly. It bugs me when I work with people and they'll say new, whatever the document's called, and then new, newest, who remembers next week what new was and whether new or newest or final? They don't work. Use 1, 2, 3, because that makes sense. Anybody knows that 5 is greater than 4, but nobody knows whether new or final is the final document. So we just need to plan ahead and speak with one another about the best way to organize things, either for ourselves or together with other people.
I'm sure at the center of your productivity is first, you've got a plan. And so many entrepreneurs jump out, they've got the idea, and then they start running. It's like, instead of ready, aim, shoot, it's ready, shoot, aim. You've got to take a little bit of time ahead of time and plan and get your strategy and get your organization set.
Absolutely. That's why in winning strategies, planning is the first item in that area. So you need to get organized and planned for your long term, for your short term, and, and anywhere in between. And, like you had said about, selling your business. So if you're looking to sell your business, you have to get those things organized. You need to get your files organized, because they're going to go through everything that you have. And the sooner that you can put together a system to help you to do that, the better. And that's going to help you then manage your processes better, because each stage of a process may have a particular document that's associated with it. So it just makes sense to take a step back and plan these things out ahead of time.
Yeah, one of the questions I always like asking business owners is, if you didn't own this business, but you just came in today to buy this business, what would you do differently? And it's amazing. Or, you just got fired as CEO. You need to bring in a new CEO. What do they need to do differently, better? It's a tough question sometimes. I know sitting in that chair and asking myself those, it's a tough look in the mirror sometimes, because there's so many things we want to do. There's only so many hours in a day, and it's so easy to get caught up in putting out fires every day as opposed to working on long-term strategic things.
Absolutely. It's being that operator, right? Most of people are operating their business versus really owning their business and looking at it. And I love those questions, because what it does is it gets people into a different mindset of, well, when I think of it like that, and then that opens up them to see more clearly, because they need to get out of that. If you're in a hole and you're digging, what's the best way to get out?
Stop digging.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Sounds obvious, but why is everyone out there still digging?
Yeah.
So what we do is we help them by taking away their shovel, right?
That's right.
And then having them look up and see, oh, look, there is a light up there. How do I get up there?
Yeah. And if they start digging with their hands, you whack them with the shovel.
That's right. That's right. I'm glad you do that too. We do have so much in common.
Yeah, that's why you hired me. I always say, look, you may want to fire me after a couple of weeks, simply because I'm going to piss you off some point during the process. Right. And I don't care. I'm here to tell you what you need to hear, not want to hear. Who's holding you accountable? Many will answer, myself. Well, that only goes so far. You'll do more for others than you'll do for yourself. If you're not getting the results that you want, need, and desire, it comes down to your accountability. If you're ready to stop dabbling and really play full out, head on over to thorconklin.com, and under services, check out our real accountability system. This is not for the timid or weak of heart. This is only for those individuals that are truly committed to taking their game to the next level. Our morning routines are so important of setting us up for success. What are some of your habits and routines during the day in order to get yourself productive?
I just did a couple weeks ago, a Facebook Live kind of on this, and I'm going to reverse that a little bit.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of people who talk about what they do in their morning routine, and there's so many similarities. So I want to just give a couple of tips of what you should not do in the morning.
Oh, I love that. I love it. Don't do this. I actually, Wednesday's episode of my podcast is the 52 business mistakes that I made. I screwed up. Please don't do these. So I love the do not do list. Continue. So
sometimes it's more important, right, to be focused on what we should stay away from.
It is. Absolutely.
It's way too tempting. So the first thing is the news. A lot of people, they watch the news first thing in the morning and the last thing at night. And that is the worst thing that you can do. When we talk about psychology as one of the core ways to change your state and to manage your energy, when we feed ourselves first thing in the morning with that negativity, and let's face it, it is 99% negative. If you want to be up on what's going on in the world, I'm cool with that, even though I personally do not watch the news ever. Well, I shouldn't say ever, almost never, because I hear what I need to hear, but I respect whatever somebody's wishes are. Just don't do it in that core time in the morning. Maybe schedule it for a mid-morning break, or check it out at lunch. There's nothing that's there that's urgent for you to get to. So why are you taking the best hours of your day and tainting it, especially also before you go to bed? Because what you want to do before you go to bed is to focus on some kind of gratitude, or, something that is going to fill your mind with questions about how you want to resolve a problem that you're thinking about. Let your brain work for you versus filling it with negativity. So do not listen to the news before bed and when you get up. What would you say about that?
I love it. Actually, I canceled cable 4 months ago because I didn't watch a lot of TV, but it just kind of crept in here and there. And then what did I do? I tracked it. And at the end of the week, I was like, wow. You didn't even realize that you just spent 4.3 hours. You just thought it was 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. I catched up on the news. I saw what the market was doing. It's amazing how it adds up. But you got to track. You got to track and measure everything.
Absolutely. Everything that
matters.
Makes difference, right? To give you that awareness. And so not only does it suck up a lot of your time, right? It becomes that wasted time that, oh, why did I spend so much time doing that? TV makes people stay up later than they need to. It affects their sleep, and sleep is so important to be productive, right, the next day. And as I said, it's a lot of negativity.
Yeah.
So it has all those different impacts on your performance.
No question. Actually, on my calendar or in my calendar, I have a recurring task or appointment every night at 9:30. It's go to bed. Get a great night's sleep. Now, I don't always get in bed by 9:30, but I'm consciously trying to figure out how to hit that mark every night because I'm up at 5 and I know I need 8 hours. My body needs it. I always find that the success in the following day starts the night before.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Tell me some of the best advice you've ever received.
Well, I can tell you a story that I tell in a lot of my events and keynotes because it was a crucial moment for me. So
I love stories.
So basically, I had just sold my technology company to a public company, as we talked about earlier, and I went to work for a large market research company, and I thought this would be a walk in the park because I had my own business. I was working like several 24-hour days and burning the candle at both ends. And I thought, okay, I'm ready for this big company, big resources, 9-to-5 job, right? So when about a week before I started, I was brought into a task force to reorganize the company. So I was hired as chief technology officer for a daughter company of the market research company, and they wanted to reorganize that. And so, I saw the writing on the wall there. This wasn't going to be as easy as I thought. And so what turned out from that task force is I went from chief technology officer to CEO of a holding company of 5 companies across 5 countries. And I was working primarily in a German-speaking country. And my stress level started to go out the roof. So that was way more than I had ever dealt with before. Complexity, lots of different elements to the turnaround, a lot of HR issues. The first day I had to fire 40 people.
That's tough.
It was really challenging. And I started to question myself, was I right for this position? Did I really have the skills that it took to do this position? And so I went into my boss's office. His name was Peter, and I openly told Peter how I felt and that I really wasn't sure that this was going to be a good fit. And he said something to me that was so simple and so profound that it really changed the way that I looked at things from that point forward. He said, "Penny," and he said this very calmly, like here I am all stressed out, right? And I thought he would be stressed that I wanted to quit. He was very calm, and he said, "Penny, I hired you to make decisions. What you do with the rest of your time is up to you."
Wow.
Right? At first I was like, yeah, easy for you to say. What does that mean? But when I really thought about it, he was right. I was caught up in the day-to-day and in the minutia of everything, and I didn't need to do everything. What I was really there to do was more strategic, and I was getting caught up in that and not being able to maintain perspective and do the most important things.
So you got caught down in the weeds.
Yeah, totally, right? And the problems became, I didn't see the problems really for what they were. I think, Tony Robbins has an expression where, I think it was Tony that I heard talk about this, where he says, see the problem for what it is, not worse than it is, and not better than it is, but for what it is. And that requires you to have like an outside perspective of it, not to get emotionally attached to the problem and the challenges that are going on in the organization. And I think that's what happened is I got emotionally attached and I lost perspective, right? And when you're stressed, you lose access to your executive function of your brain. You go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And that's where I was. And I think that's where probably 80% of people that I interact with in businesses, and maybe you can say the same, they're in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. So they don't have access to the best part of themselves.
Oh, absolutely. So now we know the issue. How did you get out of it? And how can we get out of it?
Well, I took that great advice, which is I decided to be able to take a step back, take myself out emotionally, and take a look at, well, what really needed to be done. And I spent more time reflecting and planning. And I do that now all the time. Whenever I feel a little bit of stress, I say, okay, hold on a second. Let's take a step back and see what I need to look at. What am I seeing? What am I not seeing? And what do I need to focus my efforts on? And how do I get rid of the rest of this, whether I delegate it, automate it, or just put it on hold?
So you asked yourself great questions.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the quality of our life is really directly related to the quality of questions that we ask.
I've heard someone say that before. It's so interesting that you say that because just about 2 weeks ago, I interviewed this really interesting guy. He's a tech guy, has an incredible business that helps entrepreneurs in the tech space. And he said, if you're in a situation and that stress starts to build up, he goes, that's a sign that you're on the wrong path. You're in the wrong direction in what your business is, but it's a sign from the universe that if you need to move a little bit to the right or the left, or in this case, step back and start looking at things from a different angle. Start asking different questions. And, when I first heard that, I was like, all right, here's one of these, hippie kind of, guru, let's sit around and have some tea kind of guy. But it's really interesting because as I think back in a lot of cases, so many times stress has been getting stuck down low and not being resourceful and not stepping back, taking a deep breath, and what you were doing, asking better questions. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah, you know what I use sometimes to talk to people about how to deal with, let's say, feedback in situations that they're not happy with the results is, I talk about the kids game. And I read this in an Oprah magazine when they were talking about people who get out of institutions who have addictions, and as they're leaving, they're helping people to adapt and appreciate how to work with interacting with other people and the feedback that they're getting. So, and they use this game, and I use this all the time. So, as kids, right, we played this game where you'd hide something in the room and you'd say hot or colder.
Yes.
You know that game?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So what happens when you walk in the room, you're playing this game and something's hidden and you just stand there? What happens?
Nothing.
You get no feedback whatsoever. So when you take a step in one direction or another, what do you get?
Feedback.
You get feedback. You get to find out whether you're hotter or colder. So if you don't stay in motion and be, as you said, take a step back and be aware and say, okay, what does this feedback mean? And understand whether it's hotter or colder, then you know what your next step is to be able to move it. So, in any aspect, even if you get a result that isn't what you want, it's still a positive result because you're getting feedback, which is helping you to correct course. And
what's interesting as you were saying that is when you move, you take a step, you listen for the feedback, and then correct. Versus going into the room and running around from corner to corner, running all over the place. and all of a sudden, you're getting feedback, but the feedback's delayed because you're not stopping and taking it in. Right. That's that spray and pray approach that I talked about. Yeah. But how many of us have gotten caught up in that, right? We're running down one path, and it's like, this is not working. And then by the time you get the feedback, you're on another path. I interviewed a world-class adventure racer a few months ago. And I said, you're in the middle of a jungle and you have no idea which way to go. Do you go over the ridge, the right side of the mountain, the left side of the mountain? How do you get to where you're trying to go when you can't see what's ahead of you? She said, you just got to keep moving. Because if you stand where you're standing right now, nothing's going to change. And even if you choose the wrong path, you're going to know within a few steps, a few miles. And what's interesting is you may have chosen the wrong path, but there just might be a shortcut. And she actually gave an example where they came to a river. They couldn't go anywhere, so they jumped in the river. And the river actually cut hours and hours off of their time. But they didn't even know it was there. It wasn't on the map.
Right.
Fascinating. Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.
That concludes part 2 of our discussion with Penny Zenker about productivity. Check us out later in the week for part 3 when Penny and Thor get into dealing with negativity, saying no and learning from failure, all on the Peak Performers Podcast. See you at the top.